Thanks for sending your question. So we're looking for all 6 trig values for 210 degrees. So the first thing we need to do is figure out which quadrant we're in, because off the top of my head I can't figure out where 210 degrees is. So it looks like starting from 0 degrees, we're going to go to 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and then 270. So it looks like we're somewhere in the 3rd quadrant. Identifying what quadrant we're in is going to tell us the sign of our trigonometric functions. So you'll see here that I've written CAST, starting from the C in the 4th quadrant, cast. Some students also memorize this, starting from the 1st quadrant, as all students take calculus. So however you memorize it, it's going to tell you which trig functions are positive in the particular quadrant that you're in. I have a T in the 3rd quadrant, which tells me that my tangent is positive. Since cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, that will also be positive. Taking the reciprocal of something does not change the sign. Everything else is going to be negative. So now that we have the sign of our trig functions figured out, we're going to go ahead and figure out the value. So to figure out the value, we need to find what's called a reference angle. Meaning, I've got this angle going on down here, but really I want to work with something up in the 1st quadrant because that's what I'm more familiar with. So 210 is probably like something like this. So I just want this value right here. So what I'm going to do is take 210 degrees and subtract 180 degrees so that all I'm left with is this angle right here. So 210 degrees minus 180 degrees is equal to 30 degrees. That is my reference angle. Let's go ahead and draw our 30-degree angle approximately up in the 1st quadrant. So that's the angle that we're going to be working with to find the numbers that go with all of these trig functions. If you're allowed to use a unit circle to find sine and cosine, that's wonderful. If you're not, I have a little trick. If you write sine and then write the angles in order in the 1st quadrant, the main 3 ones that you'll see on the unit circle, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees. Underneath you can write cosine, and you just write the angles in the opposite order, 60, 45, 30. Then figuring out what these 2 functions are equal to here is easy as 1, 2, 3. So we're literally just going to write down 1, 2, 3 in order. Take all of these numbers and put them all over 2. And go ahead and take the square root of everything. So this is how I've always found sine and cosine for my reference angles. Not very fond of the unit circle. So let's go ahead and find the values for each of these, the 30-degree angles. And then what we're going to do is just basically take those numbers and put them behind these signs. And those are going to be the values for your trigonometric functions at 210 degrees. So it looks like sine of 30 degrees, square root of 1 is just 1, of course, so that'll be 1/2. And cosine of 30 degrees, let's go over here, is rad 3 over 2. Well, tangent of 30 degrees is just sine over cosine, so that's going to be 1 over rad 3. And cosecant is just the reciprocal of sine. Secant is just the reciprocal of cosine. You'll see C always goes with S, and then the tangents always stick together. So we're just going to go ahead and flip these numbers. Go ahead and rationalize those denominators if your teacher requires that of you. Flipping that, we'll just get rad 3. So we're going to take each of these values for our reference angle. We're going to go ahead and put them up here. So sine of 30 degrees is the same as sine of 210 degrees, except it's negative. Same thing with cosine. And tangent stays positive. And we're going to do the same thing for our secant, cosecant, and cotangent functions. So this becomes 2. This becomes 2 over rad 3. And finally, this becomes positive rad 3. And that's it. Thanks again for your question, Emily, and I look forward to answering more of your questions using SnapMath in the future.